So quite a few people have been asking me to do a guide on SP Sugawara, which I kind of understand because SP Sugawara is a fairly universal character, and in fact, I think there are three different ways of how to build him. And as a result, I'm going to try to cover all three of the different roles that Sugawara can play in, and also just give my thoughts on depending on what kind of role you want him to play, what are going to be kind of the things you want to watch out for in terms both of the positioning of the character and also in terms of the potential build. All right. So what are going to be the three different roles? So role number one, you can have him as a pinch server. Role number two, you can play him in a double setter formation, but then have him subbed out by the liberal once he rotates to the back. Well, role number three, you can play him as the only setter on your team. Okay, so let's start off with role number one, which is a pinch server. The reason why you may want to play SP Sugawara as a pinch server is because when he actually does a serve, first of all, you can increase your team morale by 10, but more importantly, you actually get a 12% basic stat for that one round. So not only his good in terms of the fact that he actually have a surfing skill, which is better opposite than other first team members who don't have a surfing skill. But on top of that, it's not just because he can just surf, he actually give additional buff to the team members as well. And this is not the only buff he will be getting, because on skill 3, if you actually read it, when he first enter the game, so for example, when he come on as a pinch server, what's going to happen is your players will lose 50% of their stamina. However, in return, you will also be increasing your basic stats. Okay. Now, the one thing you have to watch out for this is that if you actually continue reading the skill, what's going to say is that afterwards your side player recover 15 stamina at the end of each round for 4 rounds, which sounds great. However, this is only going to happen if Sugawara is actually on the court. So, for example, if he actually lost already, which Sugawara will come in as a pinch server, then the only regeneration of the stamina you get is just going to be 15. However, if Sugawara actually stays on the court a bit longer because you actually won that rally, and therefore he can be on the turn on the field for one extra turn, then essentially you can get another additional 15 stamina after the end of the second round. Okay, and the reason why this is very important is because if you actually have him coming on as a pinch server too early in the match, what's going to happen is that you'll be losing a lot of stamina. However, there's no way you'll be actually able to recover enough. So yes, you would be getting a nice permanent buff due to the skill 3, but at the same time you will also lose a lot of stamina, which is not ideal. So actually, if you do plan to play SP Sugawara as a pinch server, one thing you have to bear in mind is that you only have him coming on as a pinch server towards the end of the match, and the best way of doing that is just make sure you have him subbing in for someone who is only, let's say, on the 4th rotation in your team positioning. So therefore, by the time it comes to Sugawara coming onto the court to actually do the pinch serve, it's already towards the end of the match, and that what that basically means is that you probably only lose about 15 or 20 stamina, and in return you can get probably, let's say, 3% basic stat to your whole team, which is not massive, but it's better than nothing. And even if you lose that straight away, you'll be able to recover stamina anyway, so you are just going to break even in terms of stamina consumption and stamina usage. And if you actually happen to win that rally, then you will actually end up getting even more stamina back, which once again is very important towards that kind of end of the match where everyone's actually on the low on the stamina. And if you manage to get the stamina edge over the opponent, that could provide to be very beneficial. Okay, so that's basically how you would want to play him as a pinch server. Okay. Now, role number 2, you can also play SP Sugawara as a in a double setter formation, or role number 3, you play him as the only setter on your team. The difference between them is going to be down to your skill resonance, and that's because if you actually take a look at SP Sugawara's skills, what you notice is that his ultimate actually use his stamina. So what that basically means is that if you have Sugawara on the court for a long time, eventually he will just use up so much stamina, he would get really low, and when your stamina drop down to 0, you won't be able to use any of your skills, which is obviously not ideal. So one way to mitigate against that is obviously have him as skill resonance 2, in which case he would actually recover 5 stamina whenever he actually touched the ball, and that is basically the best way to ensure that Sugawara can actually have enough stamina to stay on the court for the whole time. And that's kind of why I would say if you do not have the skill resonance at level 2, then what's going to happen is that Sugawara is just simply not fitted to play the entire match, and in those kind of scenarios, the best way of doing it is to make sure you sub him out eventually And the best way of doing that outside the pinch server is obviously having him set as the liberal subsetting. So by the time he rotates to the back, he would then be subbed out. Okay. Now, if you do actually have him as skill resonance 2, you don't have to play him in a single setter formation. You can still play him in a double setter formation, but at least you have that flexibility. Okay. Whereas if your Sugawara is only at skill resonance 1, then I'll kind of only recommend you play him in a double setter kind of formation and then have him subbed out by the liberal once he rotates to the back. Okay, so those are going to be the 3 different roles that you can play SP Sugawara in. Now that is going to also impact in terms of your team rotation. So let me just quickly show you. So if you play him as a pinch server, like I said, you normally want him to be coming on as a pinch server towards the end of the match. So that normally means, for example, you have him up, set him for the player in real rotation number 4. So by the time he comes on, you'll ensure it's definitely towards the end of match. Now that's basically the positioning for pinch server. If you play him in a double setter formation, then the most ideal position to actually play him is going to be in position 3, and that's because this ensures that he can definitely be on the court for at least 4 rounds, and therefore he can fully recover all of the stamina consumption that he'll be using. Okay, if you play him, for example, in skill in position 1 or 2, there's a high chance that you won't be able to have him on the court for all 4 rounds, and therefore you actually lose out in terms of stamina. And if you play him in position 4, then it's very likely that he will just run out of stamina himself because due to his ult. Okay, so if you play him in double setter formation, the most ideal way of playing him is going to be in this position 3. Then if you actually play him as the only setter on your team, because let's say you have the skill resonance 2, then in those cases, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. You can play him however you want. The rotation is going to be more down to the rest of your team member and whatever rotation suits your whole team the best. Okay, so that's kind of the team building and also positioning for SP Sugawara. Now lastly, let's do his potential. But before doing his potential, I just want to bring your attention to his skill 1, which is basically saying that whenever he's on the court and someone on your team uses either block skill or receive skill, they will get buffed by other people in the same rally, in the same role, either by their block or by their receive. Okay, and this is going to be somewhat important when you come to like substats optimization for SP Sugawara, because sometimes you actually want block substat, sometimes you want receive substat, depending on where your Sugawara is actually positioned. Okay, but first of all, let's talk about the potential set. So the best potential set for SP Sugawara, well, once again, it's going down to the role you want him to play in. If you play him as a pinch server, then obviously you want a 4 set in precise serve. Now, if you don't have him as a pinch server, but have him in just like either single or double setter formation, then what I would say is a 4 set in precise set, and then obviously the other 2 pieces can be whatever setter wants, which also increase set stat by 15%. Now, if you don't want to do a 4 piece on precise set, what you can also do is just mix and match and basically have 3 times of this 2-piece effect for all 3 of the setter potential. So basically you do a 2-piece precise set, 2-piece precise serve, and then also 2-piece of the setter dump. All of them will give a 15% increase to set stat. Okay, so all of them can work. It's just really down to whatever you have available. Then in terms of the main stat and substats you want to look for, so slot 1, 3, and 5, those are fixed, so nothing to talk about. Slot 2, this is going to depend on whether or not you play him as a pinch server or you play him in a different role. If you actually play him in a pinch server, what I would recommend is that you want to use the serve stat, because obviously that's what he'll be especially coming on the court for. If you actually play him in a single or double setter formation, I would recommend either the set or go for awareness. The set one's kind of obvious. Awareness to me is also quite nice in the sense, first of all, Sugawara doesn't really have much awareness, so increasing his awareness is always not a bad idea in case you get lucky and basically trigger his the default 50% crit damage buff, so that's always nice. The other reason why I also think awareness can be good is because obviously he not only he has a setting skill, but he also has a surfing skill, and awareness would help you to contribute towards both set and also serve at the same time as well. Okay, but that's kind of why I feel like awareness or set can both work if you play him in either that single or double setter role. Then it's also kind of a similar story with slot 6, but basically if you have him only coming on as a pinch server, I'll probably go for, well, you can either go for serve or go for attack technique. To be honest, I think attack technique is normally the safest choice for slot 6 for any kind of setters, mainly because it will once again benefit both their serve and also set at the same time. Okay, so if you have the luxury of picking the main stat, make sure you pick one which have attack technique. And then in terms of slot 4, this is going down to your positioning, because like I said, due to your Sugawara skill 1 effect, he can actually give a tiny bit of a buff to your front row blockers when he's up front, and also a tiny bit of buff to the back row receivers when he's actually at the back. So depending on your positioning, whether or not your Sugawara is going to be more up front or more at the back, you can then choose your main stat to be either block or receive. Okay, so for example, if you have him setting as a pinch server, he would only be at the back, in which case I would say the main stat on slot 4 should be receive. Now, however, if you had to play him, for example, in a double setter formation where he should be starting in position 2, like I said, right? So he can eventually, so we'll have 2 rallies up front and then eventually rotate to the back. In those kind of circumstances, because he will be up front more than he is at the back, I would then recommend you choose the main stat as block. And then if you play him as the only setter on your team, then once again it's going down to your team positioning. Okay, whether or not you have more time at the back, in which case you go for receive, or if you have more time up front, then you go for block. Okay, so that's kind of the main idea. And then as general rule of thumb for all of the substat, you want to go for attack technique because that benefits set and also serve. You can also go for awareness if you want. I probably wouldn't recommend strength purely because he doesn't really have any natural awareness. So improving awareness is nice to increase the consistency of triggering a crit, but increasing crit damage without increasing crit is just very pointless. So I can recommend awareness or attack technique, but I wouldn't recommend strength. You can also obviously go for either serve or set, depending on which role you're building him for. And once again, similarly, you can either choose to have some block or also receive substat, depending on his positioning and whether or not he is more up front or more at the back. So that's going to be his potential. And then lastly, for his memory, obviously the best memory is going to be the one for his own. And it's a fairly universal memory, so I do highly recommend getting this as well, okay? Now, if you do not have this, then the best universal SSR memory are going to be the one for Akashi or the one for Conquer Goblin. Now, if you do not have either of those and you don't have obviously resources or memory ticket to actually summon for the set memory, SP Sugawara is probably actually the only character who can actually use this free set of memory that you can exchange from the challenge store. Okay, and the reason for this is that this does have an effect where the stamina falls below 30, you can actually restore 12 stamina. Sugawara is probably the best setter to actually utilize this effect. Okay, so if you really don't have the resources to either go for his own memory or go for one of the more universal SSR memory, then in those cases you probably just have to take this free option as a budget alternative because it does still kind of compatible with SP Sugawara. Okay, so that's basically a quick breakdown on how to actually play SP Sugawara depending on the role you want him for. Let me know what you guys think and also how you are building them.